His legacy has its rightful place in the UCLA Hall of Fame. He has spoiled us with his tennis coaching career as a Bruin that has taken on dynastic power. Yes, it is a former Bruin tennis legend and himself a player, a national championship, also won a title as a coach. It is Billy Martin. Billy, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Brian. Always love chit-chatting with you about tennis.
Absolutely. Any excuse to talk tennis and with Billy Martin is a treat. I'm Bryan Fenley, and certainly Billy has an infinite number of accomplishments that makes him an excellent source for storytelling. So hopefully we can get into some of that as well. But I'm going to start with the hard-hitting question first, Billy. Why are you so good at your job?
Well, thank you for saying that. But, I guess probably because I love what I do. I'm passionate about it. I love UCLA. I'm still very competitive. I get those butterflies in my stomach the morning of a match or the night before, just thinking about what's going to happen. Not knowing your destiny, I guess, is always a lot of anxiety, but it keeps me motivated. But I think I've learned a lot through my tennis career, both as a player and as a coach. I still think I can get better every year as a coach. You never can stop learning about your sport, how you treat your players, how we can do a better job funding our program. So much goes into it, but I think no matter how long you've been doing anything, you hopefully can strive to get a little bit better.
Billy, how do you feel like this whole ordeal in having tennis being put on pause with COVID-19 will forever change you as a coach in how you approach things from now and for the rest of your coaching career?
Well, I think it's probably going to be the same for me as for hopefully everybody. I think as you go through life sometimes and you don't hit little stumbling blocks, you don't appreciate what you've got until you don't have it, is a way I remember my parents always explaining it to me. So I think, I've heard it even from my players, which is, I think, rewarding in some ways, so that when we do get back to our normal setting, which I'm sure we will, I think they'll be more appreciative of the things that they receive from UCLA, the coaching they receive from us, the things that their parents do for them. I've always felt a little bit with our American athletes that we deal with, there's a little bit of entitlement in them. And that's why sometimes it's refreshing to have our foreign student athletes that come and actually are a lot more appreciative of what UCLA and collegiate sports offers them.
I can't wait to see the smile on your face and all your players' faces when we do get back to that playing setting and you are able to reunite and just play some tennis. And just like you said, the level of gratitude cannot be understated here. Just being in each other's presences and having tennis back. I'm excited to hear what that first encounter with everybody back together is going to be like. And, I look at your playing career too, Billy, and you really used tennis as an escape. It was an obsession. And how did it grow into that growing up for you?
Well, I started playing tennis when I lived in Chicago. I was born and raised in the Chicago area. My parents moved from Evanston, Illinois, to a small little suburb called River Forest, where there was a really nice tennis club that hosted the National Amateur Clay Court Championships. I ball boyed for Arthur Ashe and a lot of the great players, American players. It gave me a little fuel there, but I've always said I was dyslexic as a young man, still am. I have to really be careful when I balance my checkbook. I switch numbers and everything else, but I was not a good student. I didn't read well. I was just definitely hiding in the back of the class and hoping the teacher wasn't calling me. So I really felt my calling was, even at a young age, had to be sports. And I was very rambunctious, lots of energy, found tennis, and just, never wanted to leave it and wanted to try to strive to be as good as I possibly could.
Billy Martin joins us, UCLA men's tennis coach. I'm Bryan Fenley. Now, Billy, I have also read that during your playing career, and maybe this goes for coaching as well, that you would partake in some superstitions, and to the extremes in which you would go to see those superstitions through. What would that be like?
Oh my goodness. I know there's worse than me because I've seen them and even some guys on my team through the years, but yes, very superstitious. I mean, from the, not changing your outfit or your underwear or your socks or something that if a tournament's going very well to where you eat, not stepping on lines. And, I always was very superstitious with my grip and, advancing it one way, kind of clockwise every time between each point. I didn't like playing with the same ball point to point, but very superstitious in so many ways. But, I think that's the nature of sports a little bit. And, I'd say Keegan Smith is really one of my favorite guys with superstitions, being out in the court and seeing where he has to tap his racket and this and that. I chuckle inside, but I always want to make sure he has room to come back and tap that bag if he needs to one more time.
We think of baseball as like on the forefront for superstitions and what pitchers and batters will do, but tennis certainly has its place in that realm as well. And your career as a player, Billy, what would you say was the highlight, the pinnacle of what you were able to achieve? What moment was that for you?
Well, I think there's different moments as you go through, like the juniors. I think winning Kalamazoo, which was the national junior championships, that so many great players from Jimmy Connors, Arthur Ashe, to all the greats that have come up through, American tennis. Winning the NCAAs was absolutely a goal of mine. To be able to play pro tennis, my dad said, you're not even considering pro tennis until you win the NCAA championship. So
Wow.
I knew to get to that next level, which is what I really wanted to do, I had to do that. And then I would say, I think, getting to the quarterfinals of Wimbledon was a highlight in my life as far as a tennis player. Winning the French mixed doubles championship was a great honor, although I didn't realize it at the time. I wasn't scheduled to play. I took a partner from a friend of mine who lost first round and was going through the locker room asking anybody to play with his partner so he could get up to the grass court, start practicing on the grass before Wimbledon. I fell into that luckily, but I still think as fun as all my playing highlights were, winning a national championship, whether it was an assistant coach or head coach, was as fun a moment because you shared it with so many different people, the team, the coaches, your boosters, the parents. Those are really probably a special moments and probably the most disappointing moments in my tennis career, losing some NCAA finals matches that were very close and didn't go our way. But then you at least have somebody to mourn with, I guess.
Yeah. I want to bring about the pluses that you did or are having as a coach, but also, like you said, some of the disappointments. One final thing from your playing career, and that is I read that you've had all these invitations to sit in the royal box at Wimbledon, and you were a quarterfinalist, as you said. Why did you turn those down?
Oh, I just, with family and quite honestly, I hate traveling. I hate long flights. I hate airports. I mean, I have to do it so much with the team. I've always run a lot of summer camps, so it's right smack dab in the middle of summer camps, which has always been so economically supporting of our family. I've been getting the bug though. My two boys that are older now, 24 and 27, have been bugging me a little bit about maybe wanting to go. So I've been thinking about it and really considering doing it. I'm slowing down with summer camps. So I bet within the next 2-3 years, I might get back to Wimbledon after a long hiatus.
Oh, you heard it here first. And I think it was an article on the Daily Bruin where it was your son talking about him learning about you when you two go to like a social gathering and you have a booster or a friend that comes up to you and reminisces about a moment in your career. And your son's like, well, Dad, you never told me that. I'm learning now and I'm this old. I've noticed that kind of comes through with your humility. Like that's just, you don't go out there and say, hey, look what I've done. You have to obviously talk about it when people ask you, but that just shows you about your character. And when you took over, and I believe it was 1994, did you think if you were to, or what would you say would be your feeling that more than 20 years after that, you would have over 600 wins? Did you think that that would have been plausible, or how much of that would have been plausible for you to know that in 94 that you would have pulled all this off?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have that happen. I learned from one of the great tennis coaches, in my opinion, Glenn Bassett, who was my coach when I played at UCLA, one of the most humble guys I've ever known. Had great success in his tennis career, great success, 7 NCAA team championships. Coach Jimmy Connors was there with Arthur Ashe. I think he was a great mentor for me for not just learning tennis, but humility in itself and work ethic. I just was hoping they keep me on long enough after taking over for Glenn, which was a lot of pressure, and JD Morgan just before that. I was just hoping and praying that I could live up to the expectations that UCLA men's tennis has had. It's not come easy. I mean, I'm disappointed. I think we've lost 6 or 7 NCAA final championship matches, which hurt so much. And I feel like I've let UCLA down. Maybe some of my players, for whatever reason. You can always, think back in retrospect. Should you have done something different? I mean, in life, I think that's what we do for most anything. But I'm just grateful that we had a lot of wins. I'm hopeful that we'll have chances for a few more NCAA championships while I'm at the helm. But just, I think UCLA has put us in a great position to be able to win NCAA championships. A great racketeer group, which is our booster group, has helped us financially, as well as the department itself.
That title came in 2005, and you were a 7th seed. And so was that a season where you look at it like, wow, we overachieved? And then to get to the final and be down 3-1, how did you muster up the comeback there in the title?
Well, I think we were 7th seed, but, I think generally in those tournaments, there's usually 7, 8, if not more teams that could win it if they get a good run. So that didn't bother me being 7th. Sometimes you don't want to play maybe the top 2 teams if they're so much stronger than the rest. But I really felt we had a great team, and I felt like we had a good chance to win it. We had lost to Baylor the year before in the finals and felt like we could have beaten them then, but did not. We got them again the next year when we won it. Really played horrible doubles. I was madder than heck with the team. When we went in the locker room, I kind of chewed them out. I felt like maybe they were a little nervous. I needed to, shock them a little bit in some ways. Went out, didn't play great at the beginning of the singles either, but we hung in there. I think we showed really good character, not hanging our heads when things got tough. Won 3 really close 3-setters. My last Bruin to win, Chris Quinta, who, I will never forget and love to this day, who's unfortunately over coaching against us with the Trojans now, but doing such a great job over there. But it was a memory that I'll never forget. Certainly enjoyed it, and so glad we got that one.
Billy Martin joins us, UCLA men's tennis coach. I'm Bryan Fenley, and with the highs, as you alluded to, Billy, there are the lows, and all of those close calls in being in the NCAA title and not pulling through. And which of those haunts you the most? Is it 2013?
Without a doubt. I still wake up in cold sweats thinking it didn't happen. I mean, I have to be honest, in the perspective of life, it's nothing. So I, try to keep it in check. But without a doubt, the most difficult sport loss in my career, playing or coaching. It was so close. We were ready to celebrate. It turns out on match point, our player's tennis shoe toe, touched the bottom of the net as he hit a volley. Kind of was closing the net, hit a good volley. The Virginia player came up, scooped it up, tried to lob over his head. The ball went out. We were all looking at it, jumping up. And as I looked out of the corner of my eye, I was across the court. The umpire's looking at me and going, no, and pointing to his toe. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I went over and talked to him, and he explained it. took a minute or two for everything to calm down, and tried to calm down my player. Made a choice of whether to fight it or try to argue, or just, hey, come on, no big deal, we'll get this, it's deuce instead of, match point. But it didn't work out, and I'm telling you that I still wonder to this day,
Yeah.
did it really happen when I wake up sometimes? So yes, that was by far the most difficult one to swallow.
It's not difficult for you, Billy, to see the success that McKenzie McDonald, Mackie, has had at the next level with the singles and doubles titles he won at UCLA. And then, going out and having this hot start as a pro, going up to the world ranking of 57th, Wimbledon, fourth round. And I know he's been dealing with some injuries right now, and he did get back start of this year until we had the whole postponement because of the coronavirus and how that's affected the ATP Tour. But what have you been impressed most about him, not only in his run as a player, but also seeing how he's recovering and his ability to get back to that prime form that you're so accustomed to seeing?
Yes. Well, he did have a serious injury, ruptured his hamstring, had to have surgery, not an easy injury to come back, and had so much time where he really couldn't do anything with the leg. But he's healthy, he's back. It's going to take him a while to get his confidence back again. Maybe started just a little bit too early, but he was going stir crazy, not playing in the tournaments, and was able to get a sort of an exempt for the Australian Open. And starting a 3 out of 5 set match tournament is not the way to go, in my opinion. But Mackie's always, been a person that, responded well when, somebody thinks he can't do something. He's not a big person, size-wise. He's, relied a lot on speed, having to have a well-rounded game. His game has certainly improved since he left UCLA. His serve has gotten so much better. But it was an interesting scenario in that he had had a good fall. We had allowed him to go play lots of tournaments at the pro level, challengers, futures, did very well. And in December, he was really questioning whether he was going to come back in January for his junior year. Of course, I wasn't too happy. We had some, honest talks. And I think when it came down to it, I think he really realized that he had made a commitment for this year, wanted to come back and help us. And he ended up doing fantastically, winning singles and doubles NCAA championships. I think, without a doubt, he's happy he made that decision. I think it was great for his marketability, got him in the, limelight of, I think, American tennis. So, we're wishing the best for Mackie, hoping when we do get back, he'll get back to where he was before he got hurt.
And you've had these discussions with Mackie and other players about, hey, do you stay at UCLA for that next year or do you go pro? I'm sure that these are common conversations you're having with the families of players you have, and one that you might be having with Keegan Smith, because as great as he's been for you, it seems like there's a growing level of like, hey, I might be ready to go pro. So as you deal with that, where is he and where are you with that decision on what he wants to do with his near future?
Yeah. Well, I certainly think Keegan has great pro potential. I saw it before he even came to UCLA. Big guy, huge serve, big forehand, great mobility for a 6'6" guy. So I think that's what you want to see for kids going out on the pro tour. He really has gotten so much better physically since when he first came in. He wasn't the most dedicated athlete. He'd be the first one to say it. He loves surfing, skateboarding. He had a lot of different interests and had trouble just completely focusing on tennis, especially if things weren't going well. And that's really hard for a lot of players to, keep that focus when things aren't going well, or you've had a couple losses. But he's really matured that way. I think he's definitely going to take the fall off if we have a fall, which I'm hoping we will. But I see Keegan coming back. I think he loves college atmosphere. He loves the team thing. This will be his year. I think this year could have been a year for him to win an NCAA championship. But I think he and his parents would love to. He won an NCAA doubles championship. I'm talking singles. But I think he wants to go out with a bang, really have a good chance to win that NCAA singles championship. And again, market himself. The the agents are such a big factor of what these kids want to do. They're, somewhat right there hoping that they'll sign and get them some contracts or wild cards. That's probably the biggest proponent sometimes that I have to deal with, not so much the kids, but trying to maybe tell them what it, really it's like out there. And, talking to former players that maybe have gone earlier or have gone the right time is important. I think he's doing that. But if I were a betting man, I think we'll see Keegan Smith back in the blue and gold for one more season.
Oh, I think we would all love to see that. And you had even said that given your experience playing professionally and now coaching and dealing with your own players now that have those similar aspirations of going pro, that life on the road and traveling and, the monotony of all these tournaments, there's not a whole lot of like sexiness to it. So how do you kind of mentor them and say, hey, look, there are perks of going pro, but from what I experience as well, it's not necessarily everything that it's shaken up to be.
Well, so true, Brian. When you watch the pro tour, the Djokovic's, the Nadals, the Federers, that life looks great. But generally, that's not the life of a young pro. It could be futures tournaments, and I'm not going to name a city that maybe I don't like to get anybody from there mad at me. But there are some cities where, it's not where you want to be. It's hotter than blazes or whatever it might be, colder than heck. And nobody's there really watching that much, but that's how you build up those ATP pro points and get your ranking up so that, you can get into the challengers and then start to be able to get into the bigger pro tournaments. That is a tough life, especially if you're, don't have a lot of funding and you don't have the money to have a coach or, somebody, an entourage, let's say, going with you because, mentally it can be very, very discouraging, especially if you're not winning a lot. So that's the picture sometimes needs to be painted. A lot of times it's not good for me to paint that picture because that shows negativity that I don't think they're going to do well. I think that's something that hopefully a good friend, a parent, and someone like that can paint them that picture because, again, the agents are usually picturing, having them picture, the great things that'll probably happen. And could happen, but it might not for a while.
Yeah, you're the biggest cheerleader. You're also realistic as well. So, yeah, I mean, you're always with your players and have their backs. How about this, Billy, as we wrap it up here with Billy Martin, head coach for UCLA Tennis? I'm Bryan Fenley. Where do you see the UCLA Tennis brand right now and where it stands?
Are you talking as far as, the level of our team right now?
Yeah, now and just like across the country and with all the travels that you do, whether it's recruiting, going to the US Open and checking out tournaments and even talking to parents, when the UCLA Tennis brand comes up, where do you think it is as far as where it stands with you and its dominance?
Well, I think it's a great brand. There's no doubt about it. Athletically, academically, the city, we have a lot to, of track record and history. But I have to say that, especially with the, scholarship situation in men's tennis and in a lot of Olympic sports, 4.5 scholarships for a team of minimum 6, and you really need a good 7 or 8 because someone's always injured. A lot of parity because of the scholarship situation. And I think in the last 10 years, young men, at least in our sport, are staying a little bit more regionally, especially now that the Stanfords, USC, UCLAs aren't completely dominating like they did 20 plus years ago. You've got a great Georgia program now. You've got a great Ohio State program, a great Virginia. So there's a lot of programs that weren't here those years. And I think a lot of that was caused to the parity with the scholarships. I have somebody I really want, but I just, I only have a half scholarship and they've got a full. So a lot of kids equate that to they want me more than you do, coach. But most of the time it's just that amount of scholarships not opening up that year. So I think it's a great brand, especially internationally. I think UCLA is known as well as so many of the other schools in America. And international tennis players are a big part of college tennis right now. Only place in the world they can go and get great coaching, great education, and springboard into pro tennis. So I think we've got a great brand, but there's a lot of parity out there now, and you've really got to fight for all these top recruits.
Yeah, and my final question for you, Billy, is how do you think top-notch college tennis at a program like you and what you have at UCLA or others that you mentioned, Ohio State, Georgia, to name others, how does that prepare or does it prepare to the level of international kids that are going right into the pros? So when you have people coming to college and playing tennis, where do you feel like that, or how well do you feel like that prepares you, if you're at the top of your team, to go pro and be successful?
Well, I think it prepares them very well, because so many of the young men come in and they're not really disciplined. They think they're disciplined. They think they're working hard. But I think in some ways they really don't know what working hard and really being disciplined is. Maybe when the mood strikes them a little bit more. So I think we can be there as coaches day in, day out, and really be monitoring them and being very honest with them as far as looking at them straight in the eye and saying, wait a second, you're telling me you want to be pro, but you're coming out and you're so sloppy today with your footwork or your concentration, whatever it might be. You can't be that way as a pro. You're going to lose for sure. So those are the things that we try to be there and keep them honest with as far as that's concerned. And it really is an academy type atmosphere as far as, their daily schedule set for them. They're going to get 4 hours of tennis 6 days a week. They're going to get gym conditioning, top flight sort of conditioning and coaching and playing. And, that's going to prepare them as well as anything. And then great match play, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, or all 4 years. I think they're going to be closer to playing pro tennis when they leave compared to when they came in.
And a sign of a great coach is one who has had former players go on and do big things at the next level. Billy Martin, you have done that. You have won a title as a player, as a coach, and you continue to win at just an incredible trend. We are so grateful to have you on here, Billy. Thanks again for your time, and let's do this again. And hopefully, we're starting to see some courts and some clubs starting to open tennis-wise in SoCal. So the more we see that, hopefully more of your players can get out there and you can be a part of that and get everybody back together for the fall. Fingers crossed.
Certainly looking forward to it, Brian, and thank you so much.